Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. And just so the Loving Life community is aware, yes, I'm in retirement, and I am now, in the next week, I'm going to be traveling to another country. I won't say what country that is. Those in the know where I'm going to, but I'm going to another country. And I'm going to have a lovely time for a month exploring that country. All I'm going to say is that it's a country very close to my home. Now, what I want to talk about in this video is how the business model of big corporations is basically following the same theme. Whether it be pharmaceuticals or banks or food industry or whatever. They all have the same dark strategy, which is not acting in your interests. So let's start off with pharmaceuticals. Now, if you're not aware, just the last day or two, Donald Trump has actually said in a very public meeting with Robert Kennedy by his side, he's the Secretary for Health in the United States. He said that the reason why autism is so prevalent in the United States of America today is largely because of a drug that has been given to pregnant women, which has a particular chemical in there. I might put the link to that video down below this video. But for years, the drug companies have used their lobbyists to ensure that Tylenol, which is the name of the drug given to pregnant women, remember that name, Tylenol, Tylenol. If you are pregnant and taking Tylenol, watch the video link down below here and realize why you've got to get off it straight away. I'm going to leave it at that. So, let's talk about Big Pharma. How does Big Pharma work? Well, Big Pharma is one of the major lobbying groups at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. What's their job? It's to, provide grease to the financial needs of the senators and the people sitting in the House of Representatives in exchange for favors. And of course, those favors are to look the other way when drug companies get it wrong. And as I say, below this video is a link to where you'll see Robert Kennedy and Donald Trump, the President of the United States of America, talking about this very issue in the last couple of days. So, at the moment, we're talking about the pharmaceutical lobby, the pharmaceutical industry. So, lobbyists are hired by pharmaceutical companies to influence lawmakers and regulators. For example, the Food and Drug Administration, Congress, the CDC, or the government department that Dr. Tony Fauci worked in. That's their job, is to make sure that whatever they produce is approved and pushed down the throats of the consumer for their profit. They fund political campaigns, sponsor research, and shape health policy to favor their products. The result is often weaker regulation, longer patent protections, higher drug prices, and barriers to generics. Generics being, for example, if you look at the time when COVID was flying through the community, that therapeutic drug known as ivermectin was banned from being given out by doctors as an option to it was banned while they were trying to mandate this into people's bodies. That was a direct result of the lobbyists in your community going out to the top politicians and greasing their palms. So let's just continue on this point. What about regulatory capture? Agencies meant to regulate are instead influenced or even staffed by former industry insiders. In fact, several members of the FDA, senior members of the FDA, during the COVID era, are now working or employed as directors in big pharma, like Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca. Why? Think about it. Let's talk about patents. Patent gamesmanship, minor drug changes, evergreening, extend monopoly pricing. So what they do is they've got a particular drug. Let's say, for example, it might be Viagra, which is now out of patent, so you've got a whole lot of generics. But with other drugs, what they do is they make a tiny little change in the drug and then put out a patent immediately on it, and that extends the extra cost because they've got complete exclusivity in providing that particular pill, vaccination, or whatever else it might be. This is how completely corrupted the pharmaceutical industry is. How about controlling the narratives? Funding academic studies and media coverage to favor their treatment. During COVID, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the major sponsor for evening shows and high traffic shows was Pfizer. And guess what? If those TV shows, which were the mainstream legacy TV media, had anything negative to say about their drugs, that sponsorship would have been pulled. So what are the consequences of this? Well, let me tell you. Skyrocketing drug prices. Donald Trump's been talking about this in the last couple of months, how in the UK you can pick up a weight loss drug for about $80 US, but if in the US and you need the same weight loss drug, you pay something like $1,300 US. So it's not based on how much it costs to produce that particular drug. It's based simply on how much people can afford to pay. This is the scam. And of course, it's all fine because of the lobbyists doing their work and ensuring that the drug companies are protected. What about the opioid crisis? Purdue Pharma aggressively marketed OxyContin despite the risks. And in fact, once again, it was Donald Trump who stopped that happening. Before that, people like Obama and the other Democrat presidents had just said, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. I'm getting big bucks from Big Pharma. It's okay, I'm all right, I'm okay. This is how it works. And the final point I'd make here is the limited access to affordable healthcare, especially in lower income populations, which is something that really came back and hit Big Pharma in the face, because most of Africa, because they are poor countries, did not get the COVID, you know what I'm talking about. And that's where the lowest number of deaths resulted from COVID. So you don't have to be a friggin' rocket scientist to work out that, hey, Houston, we have a problem. Now, I want to cut right across to a totally different industry where, in effect, the same thing is being done. Now, as I mentioned at the very start of this video, I'm traveling to another country next week, and I'm going to be touring that country for about a month, okay? I'm going to spend about a month in that country. And I'm going to show you one of the cards. I'm going to cover parts of it because I don't want people to misuse this information. It's a Citibank card. It's called a debt card, okay? So it's like a credit card. And I've had this card for 30 years. The problem I've had is that I've rarely used this card. In fact, I haven't used it for 20 years. Occasionally I've got to put a little bit of money in it just so that they can see activity. Now, last year, this particular card was taken over in Australia by National Australia Bank, okay, one of the big four banks in Australia. And 2 months ago, they sent me an email saying, hey, Charles, if you want to continue to use this card, you're going to have to let us know officially, because we're now bringing out our own card to replace the Citibank card because we've taken over their business in Australia. So I did that. I phoned their call center. In August, I spoke to one of the call center staff, confirmed who I was. They looked at my account. They said, oh, not a problem. We'll get the card out to you in 7 days. 2 weeks later, nothing had happened. So I phoned up the same Citibank number again 2 weeks later. Spoke to another call center person who answered the call. By the way, this time I was now saying, hey, I've got a lost card because it was supposed to be sent to me 2 weeks ago. It hasn't arrived. And he said, oh, no, they haven't sent the card out yet. So I said, well, can you make sure they do? Because I'm going to this other country in October, and I was planning on using that card while I was there. I will get it onto it straight away. Yes, don't worry, it'll be out there. We'll expedite the actual mail out. You should have it in a few days. Never happened. So, about 2 weeks ago now, I thought, well, obviously, because I didn't use this old card enough, I wasn't making enough money for the bank by going into debt. They decided that to you, because we're all about screwing our clients. Anyway, I phoned up this third person, and she said, oh yeah, look, I'm so sorry, for some reason the card wasn't sent out. I will now, and click, click, click on the computer, I will now make sure that it actually happens, and here is your reference number. And by now I knew that there was someone higher up who was going through the ones who were trying to renew and said, well, this guy is inactive, we can't make money out of him, we're not going to waste our time. That's how it works in the banking system. Now, I'm going to show you 2 images which confirm my credit rating in the banking system. Now, you'd think that someone who is sitting on 988 and in a different credit scoring system on 870 out of 1,000, it would be a no-brainer to issue a card, because you know you would never have a bad debt. But banks love it when people default, when they max out their credit cards. They hate people like me who hardly use the cards because we're just a waste of space. Rather like the pharmaceutical system, where they're trying to push drugs down people's faces to make money, the banking system is all about going after people who are vulnerable to becoming indebted or become slaves to debt. That's how it works in the banking industry. So the bottom line is that I still don't have my replacement National Australia Bank card for that Citibank card, because guess what? They weren't making enough money out of me. But luckily for me, I do happen to have another credit card called the Westpac card. There's no banking details on this, so I don't have to cover anything up. On this card, I've got a very big limit. It's well over 30,000 Australian dollars. I pay it off every month in full. I never have any debt on it. I never pay any interest on it. I've had it for 30 years, just like the Citibank card. But because it's an automatic send out, they send it out to me. I guess they're making money from the transactions I make. But I'm not someone who's in the debt trap. This is what I'm trying to make out to you. I'm trying to make this clear to you, that if you are maxing out your credit card, you are basically maximizing the shareholder profit of the big banks and the bonuses that the top people in the banks get. Your money is the money you're paying in interest is basically going there. That's what's happening. So you're an absolute loser. So if you're maxing out on credit cards, you're a loser. You're paying 20% interest, and if you wanted to clear that, there's a very simple way, by the way. It's a very simple way to clear credit card debt. That is, let's say you've got a $10,000 credit card debt. You go to another bank and get a personal loan for $10,000 at, let's say, 5%. And then you use that $10,000, pay off your credit card, cut the credit card up straight away so you're not tempted to use it again. And then you're only paying 5% interest because you got a personal loan. It's a different type of credit. It's very, very simple. It's amazing how few people realize that they can do this. And of course, the banks are not going to tell you that because just like Big Pharma, that's where their profit comes from. So let's get back to how the banking system works, how it really, really works. Banks target financially vulnerable individuals with credit cards, payday loans, and high interest debt because it makes money. These individuals often lack financial education, making them susceptible to predatory lending or becoming financial slaves to the banks. Meanwhile, people like myself, and probably you, who manage debt wisely or avoid it entirely are less profitable and are ignored, which is why I never got my replacement card from National Australia Bank, because they weren't making big bucks out of me. So, the lesson to be learned here is quite simple. If you want to be an absolute loser, then keep on borrowing money from big banks by using credit cards and maxing them out, because they will love you, because they'll have late fees, they'll have penalty fees, they will be doing all sorts of things to maximize the amount of money you pay them, which is stopping you paying or looking after your own family, paying the rent, paying the mortgage, paying for the car. All that money is now being directed to the banks and profit. That's how this system works. And I know this because I happen to have a close family friend who's fallen into the trap just in the last few weeks. And guess who is sending him? It's like a cartel. The other banks are now sending him offers to have a credit card. Why? Because they can maximize his situation. It's absolutely scandalous. It's disgusting what's going on. Whereas someone like myself, where I pay off my credit card every month, I can't even get a replacement card because there's no money in it for them. So when banks say, oh, we look at your credit rating before we lend you money, that's bullshit. They actually, when it comes to this sort of credit money, they're not interested in your credit rating. All they're interested in doing is you getting into debt, because then that's when they max out. That's when they make big bucks. Remember, the money they're talking about is created out of nothing anyway. So, the key tactics of the banks are as follows. Subprime lending. Loans to risky borrowers at high interest, profitable rates until they default. Like this friend of mine. He's got a 5-figure loan that he can't repay, and he's in big trouble. And of course now they're putting on the penalties, aren't they? You know, huge penalties. And he's got one of two options. He either finds a way out or he goes bankrupt. It's a disgusting strategy used by big banks. They are not your friend. Overdraft fees and hidden charges disproportionately hit low-income customers. Credit scores as a gatekeeping tool reward debt usage, not avoidance, and punish past mistakes harshly. Now, at this point in time, I'm going to put on the screen my credit score. This is current. I've just pulled it up today. Just for the record, the average credit score for people in Australia, in the state of Queensland, is about 700. Now, you can see the screens. On one, I'm 988. That's 12 below maximum. It's like having a AAA plus rating if you're a country. 870 is like having a AA rating, because of course each different credit agency has different ways of doing things. But here come the screen dumps. Have a look at these. Now remember, I had National Australia Bank basically rejecting my request to replace an existing card that I had for 30 years, that I'd never ever had a problem with. I'd never gone into not paying my debt in time or anything like that. 30 years. But they refused to replace it because I can't make them enough money. So when banks hide behind this facade of, oh, we've got to check your credit rating, that's a load of crap. Debt restructuring favors big corporations via bailouts, while individuals are left with bankruptcy and bad credit. So what are the consequences of the banking strategy for the average Joe like you and me? Well, a cycle of poverty. High interest payments consume your income, reducing your long-term upward mobility, which is why you never ever get into debt with a credit card where you pay 20+% interest per annum on your debt. The best thing you can do is to get a debit card, put money in there, and only use the money you've got in that card, because you don't pay any interest. If you have got a credit card and if you are nearly maxed out, my advice to you is quite simple. You go to a bank and say, look, I would like to take out a loan for whatever the amount is a year on the credit card. You get that loan, which will be at about 5% interest. Maybe in South Africa it'll be a bit higher. But when you compare it to what you're paying on your credit card, it'll be about probably a quarter to a half of the interest that you're paying on your credit card. And by getting rid of your credit card, you get rid of the temptation of spending or buying things that you can't afford because of your financial means. But if you have a debit card, you put the money in there first and you use that money. And when you run out, you say, okay, that's it. I've got nothing more to spend. I've run out. That's the safest way to go. Debt slavery. This is very important for young people, especially in student loans, payday loans, and mortgages. Because, once again, the banks are there not to serve people. You know these big bank ads that come on and say, we're here to look after our customers. We look after them in every way we can. And they are just snake oil salesmen in those ads, because they are there to maximize profit out of every client they've got. And that means money you pay them. While on the other hand, you look at what happens to banks. When they fail, they either get bailed out, like they did in 2008, when we had that housing calamity because of the way Wall Street had looked after subprime loans, or if they do fall over and let's say you've got 100,000 Rand in XYZ bank, and next week that bank goes bankrupt. You know what happens to your money? It's used to pay off their debt. You don't get it back. You stand last in line when it comes to the creditors. Banks are blood-sucking, bloody piranha. Okay? They are disgusting. Only use them for your own benefit. Never, ever use a credit card. Always use a debit card, because that way you're going to save so much money. Yes, it's going to be inconvenient when there are things you want to buy that you can't buy. But believe me, if you could look back a couple of years and say, if I hadn't bought that and got myself in debt, I wouldn't be paying 10,000 Rand per month in interest right now. That's what you've got to do. You've got to understand you've got to look after yourself. I'm going to leave it at that, but I wanted to put this video out there because, as I say, I've got this friend who's fallen into the debt trap, and he is absolutely devastated. He's got nowhere to go, and it's a horrible, horrible thing that they do, and it's typical of big business. These big corporations, like big pharma companies I talked about originally, and now big banks. It's all about them. You don't even feature for 1 second in, or your interests don't feature for 1 second in their business plan. It's like a turkey shoot. And if you've got a credit card and you're maxed out, guess what? You're the turkey. Please remember to register on Loving Life to be kept informed. Please like this video. Please share this video. And above all, be safe.